Hello everybody, I'm Krishna. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It has been the second lockdown in Bangalore because of which I have not been able to travel outside and do any landscape photography nor street photography. This seems to be like a replica of 2020. In fact, today morning I heard that the lockdown could be extended, so I ended up trimming my own hair. This is something that I've been doing since 2020, from the lockdown, where I started trimming my own hair, and looks like that's how it's going to be at least till the mid of 2021. In fact, the second wave has been quite bad compared to the first wave, where even your first level contacts whom you know are getting sick due to the COVID-19. And thankfully everyone whom I know from office as well as friends have recovered. So I was thinking today, why not do a video on what are my settings in the GFX 100S and share it with all of you all. That's the least that I can do right now, locked inside my own home. I also plan to pick up some of the old videos that I had where I had traveled to different parts of the world, and then try to convert them into vlogs until everything settles down and I start being able to travel outside the city and outside the country. The GFX 100S gives you many customization options. For landscape, I use two customization options. One is C1 and another one is C2, because I primarily use this camera for landscape. The C1 option is for tripod and C2 option is for handheld. So I have done the customization such that if I am using a tripod, then I use C1 and there are specific settings that apply automatically, and if it is handheld, then I look at C2. So I shoot in RAW because of that I've selected image quality to be RAW. I don't use RAW plus JPEG because the file size in this are quite big, so I would prefer to use the latitude that I get in RAW. Due to that, this film simulation doesn't matter to me because I can always change it in post. All the other settings in image quality are the default. Everything else I can manipulate in post if needed. On the autofocus, I put the AF mode to be single point because I want to exactly know where my focus is going to go. The AF custom setting is the default. Then the next thing that I look at is the face and eye detection is obviously off because I'm looking at landscape photography. The AF plus MF, I keep it as on so that I can I use a back button focus. I use this button for focusing, and if I want to do any fine refinement, I can also do the manual focus on the lens, which is why I keep this on. Manual focus assist, I keep it in MF assist peak, which is red high, which means when whatever is in focus gets zoomed in, and then I can see it in red so that I will exactly know where the focus is. Especially this is useful when I'm doing manual focusing. The release and focus priority is on focus. So you have two options here. You have release or focus. That is, what this means is when I'm clicking the shutter button, should the shutter button go off even if it is not in focus. In this case, because I'm using a tripod, I have a lot of time to deliberate my composition and where the focus is going to be. So I only want the shutter button to be enabled only when the focus is on. Next, because I'm using in tripod, my self timer is always 2 seconds. So I click the shutter button and I take my hand away so that there is no shake at all. So there is always a 2-second timer in this. So after the self timer, then everything else is in its default setting. Photometry, I choose the multi. Mostly in landscape, I would prefer multi because the exposure the camera calculates is after evaluating the complete scene. However, because I shoot completely in manual, I would completely rely on the histogram rather than just on the camera. I keep the ISO at 100 because I want to have as clean an image as possible. So the first thing what I do is, after I compose, I look at the histogram, and if it needs more exposure, I see whether I can lower down the shutter speed. Again, I can lower down because I'm using a tripod in this setting, and if shutter speed is not going to give me the cut, then I see whether I have to change the aperture. So usually I vary the aperture between 8 to probably 16 I rarely do. So I see whether I should take it to 8, and if that's not going to give me the cut, then I look at changing the ISO to higher than 100. Everything else remains the same. So that's about my settings in landscape photography for the shooting that I do with tripod. For landscape photography, which is handheld, I move this to C2. And all settings would be the same as what you saw that I set with the tripod, except that the self timer is off, so that the moment I click the shutter, the photo is taken. That's the only difference that you see. Again, here also I keep the ISO to 100, although Fujifilm does give you an option where you can have a custom setting of the ISO, where you can say this should be the lowest limit and this should be the highest limit the ISO can go based on the shutter speed and the ISO combination. However, I prefer taking that decision deliberately, so I have kept the ISO in manual shooting also to 100, and then I keep bumping it up as needed. So that's about the settings that I use in my GFX 100S. So if you have any suggestions of any photography topics which you would like me to cover, I would be happy to do so. You can either leave a comment or you can reach me through my website unthinking.org, and I would try to incorporate those videos. If you watched this far, I would urge you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet, and thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you.